The past few months, I haven't been able to go on my phone properly without something about Tenet popping up on my Twitter feed. Whether it's been about the movie being delayed, or set photos, or anything else, I have read everything about this movie. And I was lucky enough to see Tenet on 70mm at the Music Box last night, so I thought it'd be appropriate to rank Christopher Nolan's movies. I admire his love for film. He takes from movies like 2001 or Star Wars, while also being able to take from movies like Bad Timing or Foreign Correspondent, which he clearly takes from upon viewing his work. Nolan has a style that is unmistakable, and he has a wonderful way of owning that presence on the big screen. He's a huge fan of genre films and making them and sort of putting unconventional, big brain twists on them thematically and visually and narratively. They are unmistakable and wholly Christopher Nolan's films. Kicking it right into the list, at number 11, I have The Following, which isn't a bad movie by any means. None of Christopher Nolan's movies were bad, in my opinion, but this is definitely him still trying to discover his style. It sort of has like little remnants of other things that he's made, and I think this acted as a great precursor to what Christopher Nolan would go on to do later in his career. Number 10, I have Batman Begins. Objectively, I just don't think it's as good as the other two. Visually, I think it definitely changed the game, and it set up a huge success for the next two movies. Not that this was bad at all. Great performances overall, visually striking film, but thematically, I thought that the other two were a lot better. Again, that's just a personal preference, but Batman Begins definitely is not a bad work at all. At number 9, I have Insomnia, which in my opinion came off as almost a Walmart Memento. Not a bad movie. I think visually, again, striking. I think acted as a great precursor to sort of the director that Christopher Nolan was going to grow to be, as well as writer. But I think that this movie definitely could have been a lot better. It's an extremely compelling idea, very unconventional and very well done. At number 8, I have Dunkirk. I think the structure of the film definitely should be applauded. I think it's something that is very interesting. My problem with Dunkirk is emotionally I never felt connected. I didn't think that the main character was compelling. I didn't really care about what happened, and that, I guess part of the issue is some of the characters in that movie don't care about what happens to the main character. So I'm almost like living vicariously through them isn't helping me pay attention or necessarily I'm not feeling connected to the other characters in the story. The main character isn't bad. I think, again, some great performances overall by everybody, but I think that kind of comes down to the writing. I think that if you want me to care about this character for X amount of time, there should be enough on-screen time of people discussing why it is so important that this character is important, or why they should be saved or whatnot. They're trying to make me care about them. At number 7, I have Interstellar. Now, it's kind of a hot take, but I think emotionally the movie is lacking, and I think there are a lot of awkward moments in the writing. People think that this is Nolan's emotional movie, that this is the family dynamic, and that this is the sci-fi twist, and I don't feel that way at all. I think there are moments where it's totally lacking, and when people are crying, when I could not get behind it. The coolest part of the movie to me has always been the sci-fi element. The idea that there are people who go to a planet for 10 minutes and they come back up and their friend is 30 years older. I think that's a super interesting idea, something that he played with in a very interesting way, and I can't wait to see more of that. I think that is sort of an interesting way of approaching the sci-fi movie. At number 6, I have The Dark Knight Rises. I think the acting is stellar. I love the use of the comic book villains. I think Nolan does a great job of throwing Batman into this realistic world, this hyper-realistic world, where on the comic books it's definitely a lot different. The writing's great, and I think that the only reason this one isn't higher is I just think that the other Batman movie is just better. I think that there is more emotion in it, but this is definitely a great movie, definitely worth a watch. At number 5, I have Tenet, and without spoiling it, I think the structure is very interesting and very unique. My only real issue with the movie was there was a lot of noise, so I couldn't really understand a lot of what was being said, and you're kind of playing catch up the whole movie, trying to figure out what's going on because you can't really hear it. The plot's great. I think it's really, really cool. I think it's very interesting. I think it asks some kind of deeper questions about a lot of the things that Nolan has sort of touched throughout his filmography, which brings me to my next point. This is his greatest hits album. Easily. This is him revisiting a lot of the things that have worked in his other films, espionage and action scenes, and even people talking through masks. But I loved Tenet. I thought it was a great movie, and I'll be sure to do a video on it later this week. Number 4, I have Memento. I think after bringing up Insomnia, it's only appropriate that this is higher on the list. The structure is great. There's a great performance. I think that the tone is definitely interesting, but that's where I thought it was lacking. Still a great movie. I'd give it a 10. I mean, it's genuinely a total masterwork and incredibly ahead of its time. And I think that he did a great job of sort of playing with an unconventional narrative and plot structure. At number 3, I have The Dark Knight. I think the movie, again, is just the best of the trilogy. Emotionally, there's some great moments. Again, the acting is phenomenal. Most people people would agree with me. And I always kind of bring up like being able to see this in theaters, like properly, like growing up in IMAX was super awesome and super eye-opening, and definitely like a kind of like a special experience as someone who like loves the movies. And I think visually it's extremely compelling. I think overall the hyper-realistic world that Nolan is able to throw at us as an audience is very, very interesting and extremely well done. At number 2, I have Inception. I'm a huge fan of heist movies. This really shouldn't come as a surprise, but structurally, it's genius. The narrative, I think, is very sweet and sort of very deep and thought-provoking, and asks bigger questions than just the sci-fi one. I think this really is a movie that is able to kind of pull at your heartstrings a little bit. The world building is also super great. I think there are moments in Christopher Nolan's movies where they almost kind of come up as exposition, but he does a great job of sort of disguising it in this movie. It genuinely feels like we are discovering things with people, which is always something, a great way to sort of approach that. Something that might feel expositional, to kind of give us like a perspective through someone who might not know what's going on in the world. I think there were like the kind of stranger moments in the writing, but it wasn't overwhelming enough to the point. Kind of like Interstellar, where it would have gone lower on the list. Again, I'm just a huge fan of the heist movies, and sort of hearing about how he came up with the idea for Inception and the fact that everyone's role is based on something in the film industry. I think that's super fascinating. At number 1, I have The Prestige. I think this is easily his undisputed masterpiece. I think this is a total masterwork. I think the narrative is super interesting. I think this is easily his most compelling movie emotionally. I think a lot of Nolan, his problems come out is a lot of his movies either come off as like trying to be emotional or they're too sci-fi heavy. And I think you kind of have to pick one, but Prestige is the perfect balance. The acting is phenomenal. I did not expect the twist, and being able again to see a movie like this in theaters was super, super interesting. But I think this is easily his most emotionally compelling film. I think this plays with things thematically that the rest of his filmography is almost lacking, but he's still not afraid to bring out the sci-fi elements with Tesla and everything. I will be releasing a Tenet video later this week. Thanks so much for watching, and please like and subscribe. Thank you.